I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about spirit babies. As you may know, with our Fab Fertile Method, we take a mind, body, and spirit approach to fertility and really digging into, we have access to functional lab testing. So looking at the test, developing a customized protocol for you, and then looking at mindset and, making sure that you're aware of triggers, setting boundaries, really looking at how we optimize a fertile mindset. And then the spiritual side of things with spirit babies, being able to, how do you have faith that this is going to work? How do you tap into your intuition? What about fear versus intuition? How do you know the difference? Looking for the signs, what are our dreams telling us? All of these things, which I really think are quite impactful for us to dig into. And it gives us that real sense of peace and trust. So excited for you to listen to this episode as we dig into the spiritual realm and have you connect with your spirit baby. Hey everyone, I'm excited to invite you to a special masterclass where you'll learn how to improve your chances of pregnancy success if you have low AMH and or high FSH. This live masterclass is on Tuesday, June 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Go to Get Pregnant Freebie, that's getpregnantfreebie.com to register, or click on the link in the show notes to register your spot. On this masterclass, you'll learn what you need to know about low AMH and high FSH so that you can get pregnant naturally, how to know which diet will improve low AMH and high FSH so that you can stop wasting time and prepare your body for pregnancy success, why balancing this often overlooked hormone is essential to optimize low AMH and high FSH. Many times we've been told everything is normal and healing opportunities are missed. Space is very limited for this live interactive masterclass. Get your question answered by my team of fertility experts. Register your spot at getpregnantfreebie.com. That's getpregnantfreebie.com, or click on the link in the show notes. Excited to see you there. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. Hey, guess what? Blue Blocks is having their end of year financial sale. You can save 20% off on orders up to $159 US, 25% off on orders over $160 US, and 30% off on orders over $315 US. Definitely check out their awesome selection of blue and green light blocking glasses for day use and for evening use as well. One theme that keeps coming up with the couples in our Fab Fertile Couples Coaching Program is sleep. Whether it's insomnia, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up at night, or feeling tired when we wake up, sleep is critical for fertility and hormones. And that's why I'm so excited to have Blue Blocks as our podcast sponsor. So we're exposed to blue and green light from our phones, our tablets, our computers, indoor lights, and more. And this exposure impacts our melatonin production. And melatonin is essential for both female and male fertility. It helps determine the frequency and duration of our cycle and impacts sperm. There's lots of blue light blocking glasses on the market, but the ones from Blue Blocks, they've actually compared other popular brands, and Blue Blocks block 100% of blue and green light, while other brands fall short. So I have their sleep glasses. They have red lenses, and the ones I have are a little translucent frame, and they're so stylish and really cool. And so they eliminate 100% of the blue and green light in the 400 nanometer to 550 nanometer range. So this is the exact range that has been shown in clinical studies to disrupt melatonin and negatively impact your sleep. So all you do is wear your sleep glasses after sunset until it's time for bed, and you'll notice improved sleep after just one use. And it's also cool to use when you're flying for managing jet lag. I got to say, I was a little skeptical about the noticing improvement after one use, but literally I use these glasses and my sleep is actually already pretty good. I used them for one day, and I have to say, after one day, I had the best sleep of my life. I just felt so rested. So these glasses, they ship free and they're tracked for all orders anywhere in the world. And also they have all their frames come in prescription, non-prescription, and reading glasses. Plus you can send in your frames and they'll add the blue light blocking and green light blocking lenses to your frame. So this is an easy hack that you can add to your fertility toolkit. All you do is go to BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com. Use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout and receive a 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast to receive your 15% discount. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many, many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like, there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Kelly Meehan to the podcast, and we're digging into how to tap into your spirituality so that you know that your baby is coming. Kelly is a healing visionary, published author, birth advocate, and mother to her sons, Rain and Little Forest. She calls herself a spirit baby medium, which is a title she created from intuition and love. Kelly shares messages from the spirit of a child before life and after life. She uses her extrasensory awareness of clairvoyance and clairsentience, unique perceptions, and clinical psychology training to support the hearts of all people around the world that are looking to connect in a deeply spiritual and awakened way into parenthood. And thanks so much for listening. I'm so thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Kelly, excited to have you on the podcast.
We are here. Yes. Thank you for me being here.
Awesome. And so first of all, why don't we, if you could share with us kind of really how you came to do this work. You've trademarked the name Spirit Baby Medium, and I'm not sure if that was ever on your plans sort of when you were little, or maybe it was. So let's share with us how you came to do this work.
Oh my God. No, I love how you say that because it was not the plan. It's interesting because the word Spirit Baby Meeting came to me one day, many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. And I thought, because what do I do? I was like, am I a Spirit Baby communicator? Am I a Spirit Baby intuitive? It's like, what is this? Because I get this connection with beings before life and after life. But I was like, what is that? And so I want to say that this journey, was never, I wasn't as a child that was like, I'm going to be psychic Spirit Baby medium person someday. I was just a child like everybody else. I grew up in an environment where, not to get too deep into detail, but my parents had levels of trauma And so I always was very alert at a very young age, but I was also quite scared of being a sensitive being, and I was very quiet until I became older and separated my energy from moving from one state to another, from New Jersey to California, really, that I found that the energy still followed me. I was like, oh, there's something more happening in my internal world. And so with a lot of, education and a lot of healing work later, I started to discover that these women in pregnancy, I would see, I thought I was imagining it at first. I'd see this little being and they'd have a little story. They would say something. And I started to tell the parents this. One time in school was my most biggest story of twins. Said she wasn't having twins, ended up having twins. And the doctors didn't, or the midwife didn't know. So that's a good story. And then just, pregnant, like in an office. I worked at a university and I was like, I'm like, am I just going to tell these people this? Am I like making it up? But then I started to say the things I saw, and then they were confirmed, they were validated. And then I thought, okay, there's something to this inner psychic space of seeing these beings and then translating that information to others. And then it became something more and more and more. It became something more than I didn't realize. And then here we are.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I think, so as part of our Fab Fertile Method, our couples coaching program, we take a mind, body, spirit approach. So we're looking at, we have access to functional lab testing. So we're using testing to kind of do that test, don't guess, and figuring out the proper diet and lifestyle based on testing for people. And then looking at mindset with coaching, and then the whole spiritual part of this too. Because many people, so we're working with people with low AMH and high FSH and diminished ovarian reserve and premature ovarian insufficiency. And they may have been told by like a well-meaning physician RE that either IVF was your only option or donor eggs are your only option. And, you will struggle. And that kind of thing gets embedded in people's, subconscious. And it sometimes can be hard to even see a path forward. And that's where that uncertainty and the panic and the impatience and, I had both my kids with donor eggs and I didn't get a second opinion, didn't look into anything. I just knew it would work. I was very open to how it would work.
Yeah.
I had that knowing. But many people get stuck. So how do we communicate with our spirit baby? Yeah.
You said some really great things there about the body and the connection. And it's, like that knowing, I love that because it's like, something and maybe it wasn't what was pictured in the thought process. Like, oh, I'm going to do it this way or that way. But it's like your children come to you. And so say that again. So how do you communicate? I remember, I feel it was years ago, besides the people that I've helped, I remember years ago, someone posted in one of these Facebook groups, does anybody communicate with their babies, right? I'm not kidding you. I think there were over hundreds and hundreds of responses.
Wow.
And my point, hundreds. I was like, and it was funny because I was like, on Facebook, there's so much activity in there. And like, I just clicked on this one post and I just was like, I felt like it must have called me, right? And I'm going like reading after ever. I was like, oh my gosh. And it just really shows you that globally around the world, different cultures, different races, wherever you're at, I feel like spirit baby communication is very instinctual. Like it's not just this out there new age intuitive, whatever thing that people, to me, it's this deep soul to soul connection that I'd say like 99 maybe % of people have access to. Maybe there's always that small percentage that's completely like not, but don't get scared of that. People will start thinking, well, maybe that's me. But babies do communicate in different ways to different people. It really depends on the person and where their abilities are to listen, to sense, and to connect. And I always tell people that it's okay if spirit baby communication feels one-sided, because I get so much validation when I'm sitting with people and babies are telling me things that I think are kind of silly about foods or about the environment. But really, I feel like the ultimate message is that the baby beings are saying, I'm here. How are you? And how are then as the parent trusting and listening? Like you said, you had an instinct of knowing. That is like, that's one of the pieces, right? Some people are very visual. They get like internal inner visions or dream-like states. Sometimes daydreaming is what I call it, or nighttime dreaming, or feelings, sensing feelings, maybe in the heart space or an emotional reaction. Some people get chills. And if we're looking more, even signs in the outside world, some people will see, wow, there's this hummingbird in the middle of the snow that keeps knocking on my window. It's like, these things are not just some weird coincidence or, it's like there's interesting things that I've got to witness and be a part of, especially when there's birth loss. Moving into that connection and communication is like, how are these beings communicating with us? And they do communicate with us in maybe ways that are more energetic and more visual and feeling, because that's really who we are. And I feel like it's become very twisted in our world, especially now in the pandemic era, right? I don't know what we're calling that. But it's like, it's really shifted people into deep levels of fear and disconnect in a way where I think it's reflecting to us, who are we really? Are we this strict logical that everything in front of my eyes exists? Or are we this more expansive kind of, moving into many vibrations? Even if we don't know it, it doesn't matter if we don't know every single thing in our thought process. I always feel like if we're curious to be open to it. I live a supernatural life, let's just say. And I laugh because I've had so many bizarre things happen. Like, it's just like normal for me. I could judge them as bizarre, because that's what our culture says, right? But I've tried to normalize it with my children, with my family. They know mommy talks to babies and they accept it, and it's cool. And it's just what it is. It's just me. And so I'm going, my gosh, there's so much around us in this energetic stream around us that happens. And some of us hear it more and some of us don't. But I do feel like you can create a spirit baby practice and working with baby being in whatever way that feels right. So there's not one way to do it. There's many ways, as people know, from music to meditation to art to walking outdoors to being outdoors to even cooking. It sounds silly, but even cooking is a communication. Babies have told me, my dad cooks, or we're cooking. That's our communication. That's our connection. So it's not always, I would say it's not always sitting in lotus position, oming. You could do that if you want to, but it's not that one way. There's many different ways to communicate with baby being.
Oh, I love that. I got this from your website too, like the anatomy of the sacred reproductive system. What is that? Yeah,
I just did a podcast on that. It's coming out this week. That's it. I love that because it really brings in the medical intuitive connections that I have. But the uterus, the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, the endocrine system, all these things have certain vibrational forces, and they're reactive to the whole of our whole being. And so in that sacred reproduction, because we put so much energy, right? We want to have a baby. It all starts in the womb, but it really doesn't. I do feel like it starts in the energetic heart space and then it moves into the womb, because the rest of the body will respond when everything else is kind of in its own alignment. And I say own alignment because if you use the word alignment, people think it means perfection and control, and it does not. I could literally talk about that for hours, because it's such a passionate topic for me, how the energetic body vibrates and moves, and I see it. And so I could see things in people's bodies just by hearing their voice. And I have a paper method, I call it. It's a picture of a human body, and I write on it, and I write and draw and create circles, and I'm listening to the denser and different frequencies in the person's body. And I will question things with some people. A woman the other day, I said, your right ankle shows up. I said, it could be just my medical intuitive. So I pick up information, even if it's not conception related. So I'm still trying to skill myself in that realm. Mm-hmm. And she goes, I have a metal, whatever, piece in my ankle. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I get to create an imprint of awareness of going, oh, that's interesting, because the energy was so much more amplified there. What was that? It was like, because there was actually an element in her body that was unnatural, but she needs it. It had its purpose, and it's changing too. This is what's important. The reproductive system, the energetic, it's changing. So it could be one way at one point and then completely shift. And sometimes those energies are in the energy field and they haven't moved into the physical body, which makes people nervous, right? Because I'm going, when I pick up a certain energy, I question it. And if I don't really have an answer, and I don't have all the answers, but I say, you know what, let's just keep an eye on it. Because it's something's there, and I want us to be with it and come back to it and see. And a lot of times I get emails saying, especially the thyroid, oh no, everything's fine, it's fine. And then they're like, oh, it's not fine. And it's like, yeah. So the energy was showing us a little bit ahead of what was coming in. So getting some medical hits there too, but essentially, how do it's interesting because we work with busy professionals, type A's, typically more of a logical person. That's why they love the testing. And we say, as we say in the beginning, it's equally as important for us to dig into the hope piece of it. And just how would you approach this thing differently if you knew your baby was waiting? Many times, we want to, we could either feel like we need to rush towards IVF because we're in a panic. We're being told that that the window is closing and you'd better hustle. Or even if they're looking to do, look at things functionally or naturally, there still is that, I better rush over there. How do we get to that place of trusting, right? And that's the certainty and the trust. How do we, and this is in all things in life too. How do we access that trust and not the fear? Because the fear is that, oh shit, it's not going to work. And the fear becomes the the worship. That's what happens. So I do probably what you do is call people out on it and say what's happening, because this is the thing. And I was just talking about this in my drop-in class was everybody wants things quick and fast. Amazon, you could freaking order a package from Amazon and have it at your house the next day. Back when I'm in my 40s, back in the day, you wait 2 or 3 weeks for your package. There's something about our own consciousness that we expect it right away. And so I've worked with multiple women, as you have with the IVF journey, maybe not, or maybe going back and forth. I've had women go back and forth. And even something you just said is I'd be cautious of the wording, your baby's waiting for you. Because our logical minds will go, my baby's waiting and I'm doing something wrong. And where are they? Because a baby can be with a person for 2 years before they even decide they want to physically manifest into a body. And this is why people say, I feel like I've been pregnant for 2 years. I'm like, because you have, actually, from a spiritual perspective. And so I do feel like it's about wording with people that have that higher level of need of the type A, the control. And, you know, I've had many women like that. And some of the things I make them do, one particular woman I've been working with, I actually made her not Google things and go online for like days. And she was like, oh my God, like, how can I not do that? Right. This was like in the beginning of just all this fertility stuff she was in. And she said it was so painful and difficult, but she said it was so profound. So I do feel like we have to cut ourselves off. Right. It's so hard to do that. And there's someone else that comes to mind that was like, oh, I just got out of like doing anything. And I just felt like I'm in this dark place and I need to go take the test, right? And I go, why? Because it's been a week. I go, a week is nothing. You can't even pick up any hormones or anything in your body. So you're going to set yourself up for feeling insecure and sad. I go, this is a good test too, is waiting all the weeks. Like, what is the rush, right? Unless there's some major medical issue, right? That's the piece I noticed. And this is collective. This goes beyond conception, right? It's like, but I need to know. Well, sit with your body and listen. Like, how can you use your body as a tool? And that is a practice, especially if it's something that most people are not aware of. Now in the pandemic, being home, right? Being in lockdown. I know we were just talking about that. It's different in other countries and some are more opened up, some are not. An amazing opportunity to not watch the media and to listen to your body. How is your body responding to the world? Because if you're an empathic person, guess what? Your radar, you're picking up everything. You don't have to read all the dark, shadowy, persuasive, corrupt news to get there. You just need to listen. Your body is a channel. And so all these overthinkers control logic. It's like a training wheels. You're like, what can I do different? What can I do? You know, what is there a rush? I get it. I hear women saying, well, I'm older and I got to get there. But what are they listening to? What is being fed? Because it's not about if you hear the term, it's not about the quantity, it's the quality. So some women I've worked with and let's say they've done too much IVF, which does happen, right? Too many hormones. I go, your body's pissed off. It's not going to do eggs. It doesn't want to make eggs right now, right? I said, you need to go super de-stressed. You need to like stop everything, right? Which is so hard. Like, what do you mean I got to stop things? And then all of a sudden these particular women, I'm thinking of their follicles and their egg creation did come back. But it was like, to what expense? It's such a balance. It's so hard. I know I hear for women to find that balance of, it's ready to happen, but then, timelines may not be what you want them to be. I mean, they may not be what you've expected them to be. And that's a hard one. It's such an individual, person to person, experience, right?
Yeah. And to reframe that waiting where it's like just knowing, like, yeah, as we were talking in the beginning, you either know, like I have either strong knowing or I have like major, like visual stuff. So it's like, I just see it. Like when I'm working on my whole psychic power, because I believe we all have it, and working into that. And I just see like really strong images, and other people I'm in this group with, it's funny, like they'll see images, but they see like animals kind of doing things. I'll see just like images of whatever comes up, and I don't question it anymore. I'm like, okay, that's come up. And also I have like really strong, really like dreams where I remember there's dead people visit me in dreams, people that have passed on. Like really, I remember my dreams are very vivid. So to me, like
visual.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Other people, that's when you're talking about some of the signs and things like that. But I guess how do we either know, see, feel, and to take the waiting out of it, just know it's coming.
So I feel like people need to create what I teach a lot of my students is a practice, right? It's like, it's amazing. Like, what I heard from you is clairvoyance and claircognizance. So you have the ability to just know it and to visually see it. And for yourself and for others. A lot of people I see are very psychic visual, but also very clairsentient or empathic, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And so I get a lot of feelers, which makes a lot of sense because I am the clairvoyant and the clairsentient. And so I understand the language of the feeler, because when you're feeling or you're seeing, like you said, you're receiving that visual story and you're kind of interpreting it and then bringing it out in a certain language. That's the hard part. Mm-hmm. So what happens with people, they overthink their connection with baby and then they get lost in the logic. And so that's why it's a practice. It's like, how can we then sit inside the space of the heart, not the mind, and let the mind listen to what the rest of us has to say and just kind of be a witness with it. There's some people that feel like, oh, my baby doesn't like me, or they don't know how to connect with me. And it's really comes down to the person. And I know this because when I work with people individually, I could see people's sphere structure and how they connect. So I could see how they could miss or misinterpret or shut down. And the baby tells me things too. The baby will tell me if the parent is present or not. And in a loving way, like, oh, they don't want to connect with me because they've had loss. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And what can we do then? What can we do to bring that connection together? What ways? And so babies will say, well, my mommy needs to journal, or my mommy needs to do some art. My mommy needs to dance, I've heard. And this one woman said, well, I'm a dancer. So I go, well, and she didn't tell me this before. I said, well, baby knows that's where your space is, where you get to be hypnotic and drop away from too much thinking, too much thoughts. Because sometimes with spirit baby work, if people feel like they have to think about it so much, then they're just thinking. They're not like having an experience in the rest of their being and then moving into the different parts of that.
Yeah, because personally, I feel when you get into that space, that's where the peace and calm is.
Yeah.
If I haven't done the practice, then I'm like, oh, that's why I'm a little bit off or not grounded, or, you feel a little twitchy, or you start, I'm prone, like many of us, I'm like prone to typically attract what I am, but I'm like, hopefully further ahead and I've worked on some of my stuff, but the impatience piece for me was just vicious. Like so impatient, because my dad was very impatient and still is impatient. So I took on his impatience, and then, on that like do, and I'm fine. And that's not the case. And it's really to like, how do we slow down, but slow down with still moving forward. Yeah. With that negative programming that we might have like negatively hypnotized ourselves with whatever may be coming at us. How do we deal with trauma? And that's a huge topic in itself, but, maybe to notice if we're negatively hypnotizing ourselves, perhaps.
Well, the number one thing that comes up is even when you were sharing it, your awareness of it, bam, is profound. You're aware, like, oh, I'm like, this need for control or this need to push because of your father. Like, okay, those things, they're in us. Like, they're like, they're part of us. But if we're not aware of them, that's where it becomes an issue. But we're aware of it. Like, I know, like when my mother stuff comes up a lot more, and I'm going, and my mother's been my most biggest lesson in this lifetime on so many different levels. And I'm going, oh my gosh, there's this thing that comes up, and I'm going, oh, that's my mom's thing. And there I go, and then it's like, and again, it's the awareness of it, and that there are traumas. Like I'm doing right now a really big 12-week trauma work, with myself to bring to others from a somatic psychological perspective. And, I have a lot of foundational trauma, and I'm not shy to speak about that, but it's very emotionally invoking because my inner infant didn't get what she needed as much as I'd like to pretend and believe that she did. But I also had a mother that had trauma, which is very common. And I had and also another parent, my father, who had trauma. And why I say that is that he's always substances. If your parent was a drug user or alcoholic, that means there's trauma, and you never get the fullness of who they are. You actually don't know who they are, but you get raised by that, right? So you're getting raised by trauma. And sometimes you have trauma happen when you're like a child, or you have trauma as an adult. And trauma is healable, but what I'm learning is foundational trauma is probably the hardest to work with. I'm like, oh, great. Can I just fall off my bike or something? Or, so like fall down the steps and heal that. But there's something about the infancy time, because we're pre-verbal and our body has the memory. So even though our brain doesn't really execute it the same way, but our body has memory. But I'm going to say also our soul knows. Our soul knows and sees everything. There's work to be done. And so, but trauma, I've worked with some women who have some really heavy traumas. I don't feel like trauma, and this is going to sound interesting, because trauma is workable and healable with awareness and different methods, to get into just being in the body, right? The autonomic nervous system does holds trauma in a very intense way for people. And so what we get to do with that is we get to work on it as a daily practice. And daily, not like just once in a while, like really checking in and seeing where we're at, and really even nourishing the body with things. Food can be very distracting if it's not good food. The vibration isn't positive, and it will set your whole body off. And so, of course, in that movement exercise piece, so all these pieces together, healing whatever levels of trauma. And I tell people that babies will come through traumatic wombs. They will. They're not going to be like waiting for perfection. And there are different levels to that. Again, I worked with a woman who had, you just like, you listen to the story and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, there's a few people where you just feel it so deeply for them. And they have babies. They went forward and did the work or whatever. I remember someone did specifically, biofeedback is a good one. I don't know if people are doing that anymore. Do you remember biofeedback? Are people still doing that? But homeopathy and just, somatic psychology, EMDR, there's so many different, amazing ways to do it. But, and that's a part of it, and again, it is a very big topic. I'm hoping that kind of gets a little bit of energy around what you're looking for or what you're curious about.
Yeah, I guess it's to pick something, as you say, to bring awareness to it, and then ask for support on it, and continue to
yes.
work with it. Because I think sometimes we just want to just push it, not put it down, push it down, and then it keeps popping up, and either with sadness or anger or depression or whatever it's, you're concealing it and not working on it.
And it's in baby steps. It's not like, a lot of especially the autonomic nervous system work, you can't just there's no finish line, oh, well, here, I'm good now. It's like there's layers of pieces, because you're reteaching your body something it's dealt with for years, right? With your emotional world, with your environment. And so it does take awareness. And like you said, I love how you just wrapped it up so perfectly. And then, the other pieces kind of moving together, and to know, that you're healable, that you're lovable towards the healing, and that it does take work. It does take work. And feeling and connection and motivation.
And what about loss and grief on the conception journey? How would tuning into your intuition or with the spirit baby, how would that come into play?
Well, I do work with women weekly that have had typically multiple miscarriages. It's a big area that I actually support in, but I also do monthly private groups, which are stillbirths and infancy after life before the baby has earth time and then dies. And so, the death and grief piece is a really big piece, because with any conception or pregnancy, there's possibly death, and people don't want to hear that word, but it's true, and it happens. And especially multiple miscarriages, the level of trauma and the experience that person has to go through is emotionally, physically, and spiritually exhausting, right? To speak about that, there's a lot to say about that, but this is the hard piece, is again, doing the work around it. I'm a really big believer in grief, right? As one of my mentors, Francis Weller, he has this amazing book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow, which is everybody should be reading this book, and it's very poetic, and he talks about ancestral grief, community grief, individual grief. But I did this thing, he says we're always with the apprenticeship of grief. It's not like at this end result. And so I've met women where they feel like, oh, well, I grieved and I moved on. It's grief doesn't work that way. It just kind of comes and moves. It ebbs and flows with us. And when there's avoidance or pushback with it, it's more cultural too. I know, and especially in my culture in America, it's phobic, and it's you're not supposed to, but then women are left these feelings of death inside them. Literally, there's death inside them, and there's creation at the same time. And there's something deep in that. And it's an unwinding internal experience. And then there's the soul connection. What is this being? And of course, number one, everybody always asks, well, why doesn't my baby want to come? But it's so much more than that, right? Because it doesn't work that way. It's not logical. And we're like, oh, you either come or you don't. I open the door or I shut it. It doesn't work that way. There's a rush of energy inside women. They feel that connection of light, and then it's gone. And then there's that grief and death inside. And it's what is that? What is that next healing purpose? And how are you building that connection with your own spirituality, and with the questioning of life and death, and with this being? What is this relationship that continues? I know a lot of women that I support that had later losses or infancy loss. They are in relationship with the soul of their child consistently, chronically. And those beings reach out to me and other people on occasion, or friends and relatives. And it's quite profound to see this interlinking between all these different connections. And so I know when women are in loss, the ones that I've worked with, they don't want to go there. But then they do because they're seeing me. And I've had women in private sessions where they're in the middle of miscarrying and their energy is very different in the middle. It's a very anxious, very like it's just, it's not a good feeling, but it's happening. And it's like what to do now with this and then how to create from after that kind of being with the body, the healing and the grief. It's like, then what is the next piece to that? And, taking it moment to moment. And so there's definitely even, spirit communication after loss, I feel like is crucial just for the sanity and the balance of consciousness of the individual,
Yeah. And so that piece so with the healing process, how does that being able to communicate with a loss, how does that help, the ebb and flow of grief?
Well, because you're actually creating an awareness to something that actually has an existence. It's not just this thing that you thought was happening or not. And everyone that's had any type of abortion, miscarriage, stillbirth, whatever loss it is, there's a soul connected to that. There always is. Even in people say, oh no, there is something. There always has been. And we can either build a relationship with that being or not. You don't have to. But there's a connection to there that sometimes these beings become, I call them spirit baby guides, that they're guiding you into something. They're expanding you into whatever that piece is on your journey. It's not coincidence. It's not an accident. Because then to me, that feels like it's irrelevant, like just to move on, that it has no purpose. And the purpose is different for everyone. There's not a one size fits all purpose. There's expansion, I feel like, with people. And so when you're bringing in that part of your healing, you're going deeper into something. To me, that feels like maybe that was never acknowledged, or because before that, would you even consider that to go to that depth and awareness with that particular soul or connection to what your own experience was? And so there's that. I'm hoping I'm saying that right, because it's such a deep question. And yeah. I feel like I'm feeling the energy more of it than the words.
No, absolutely. I think and so to help people, if they're either the loss or the grief side of things, or really just wanting to connect with their spirit baby, how do we interpret these signs, symbols, the sensations, the visions, dreams, all these things, how they may come to us? Because once you start opening your eyes to these things, they're everywhere, which is interesting. Yeah. How do we start and how do we interpret?
Well, I mean, that's the piece, is the interpretation. And a lot of the bereavement mama community that I connect with, a lot of them love outside signs and symbols, sometimes dreams. And so they just listen to them. And there was one particular woman who was in the middle, literally was like snowing out, and a butterfly crashed into her and fell. And it was really a connection of her daughter. And so she's allowed to, whether it's real or not, she's allowed to connect with that symbol for her, because that was a symbol of the connection of her child. And there are other things too that come up for people in the outside world. Animals is a really big piece of that. People love animal messages, and because it's easy, because we pay attention to it. We don't pay attention to a lot of things, and we miss things all the time. And so sometimes symbols and signs come to people chronically, and they're still in denial about it. So we can't make people believe what's already in front of their eyes. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part. There's a really great documentary I've talked about on my podcast on Netflix called Surviving Death.
Oh, okay.
I would definitely encourage anybody who has birth loss to look at this. It's a docuseries. I think there's 8 episodes, and there's a few episodes on grief and healing and symbolism where people were completely skeptical. But there's just one really sad story about seemed like such a random accident of losing their son, and they wanted to connect with him. And it's almost like grieving therapy to use that and to use the connection of them. And these people were like, I can't tell you how, but I knew it was my child. It's that innate kind of, we know this connection, we get these feelings and these things that come up, and then we practice with them, we get better at them. I know I get to practice all the time because I see people every week around the world. So I get to listen to the in-between energies and bring those connections in. And I always feel like I'm always trying to accelerate and to get better and to improve, that frequency, and everybody else emanates a different frequency. So, moving into those connections, it brings about healing different for different people, and looking at those signs and symbols. It could be through sounds, through music that pops in your head. Music on the radio is a good example. Trying to think. I've shared messages with some people that came true afterwards, whether it was like flowers or an animal or something. I know there's more for sure. I feel like I may be not. A dream state, nighttime dreaming could definitely be a space of in between communication as well. And again, the parents that I know, the bereaved moms that I've connected with, they know and they trust. And that's what it really is. You build upon that because that's what that relationship is. And it's ongoing because now you're in this world I call children, this is a term I used in my Afterlife of Spirit Baby group. I don't call spirit babies children with stillbirth and infancy loss. I call them children of light. Because those children of light, they have a name, they have maybe even a birth date and a death day. And so there's something more to that awareness and connection, not to downplay, miscarriage. Sometimes those energies come back, and sometimes with stillbirths and infant loss, they don't. And that's a hard one for people to really take in. And they'll be like if there's siblings, there's parts of souls connect, and that's a whole other conversation. But there's something in our earth world. We need the name, we need the separation, we need the honoring and the memory of that experience and that connection to that child that will never be in the earth body in that way, in that lifetime. And there's a lot of feelings around that.
Yeah. And to be able to, as you say, the healing and the processing of that. And so what about from, if there hasn't been loss, or I think on the, I know on the fertility journey, it's filled with a lot of pain and frustration and anger and sadness and all the emotions, all the triggers, all the comparison, the feeling stuck, the, placing your life on hold, all these things, I know it firsthand. And so with the symbols that for us for that, what are, I know some of the practices I'm doing that have just been helpful for me are, I don't know, I get into this psychic space, which I've been taught to do, kind of look at reading screens and, yeah, and auras and past lives and just some freaking cool stuff, which I really enjoy. So if you like that, I encourage you to get into it. Where do we start on, if we're new to this, to be able to access it. And it's okay, you're seeing the symbols and things like that. So I guess the first step I would imagine would be to be open to it.
Step one, I love it. I love all that other stuff you're doing, getting people into, challenging and going into the psychic spaces of things. Wondering why. I was like, why do I keep saying the word psychic in the beginning of the podcast? So I keep talking about psychic. And I'm like, why am I saying that? I don't usually speak that way, but that makes sense to me now. I would say number one, the book, Get Spirit Babies book by Walter McKitchen.
Yeah.
That seems to be, I call it the Bible of spirit baby communication, because as we know, he's passed away many years now. But his book is leaving an imprint with people. And it's a very gentle, very kind of, I haven't read it in quite some time, but I feel like it's a really nice introduction into that energy and space. And it can be really helpful if you're completely new. And I do advise that to a lot of people that are so new to this, or they usually find me and say, I'm so new to this. It can be helpful because it's inspiring. And it really, then what happens then, I feel like, is then you start to open up the portal. Then you start to go, oh my gosh, there's a baby. Oh, there is a baby. You may not even realize it before. And he has things you could do in his book. And, some people don't like it. Some people like it. So you've got to vibe out where you're at. But I have a very small collection of recommendations. Cosmic Cradle, Elizabeth, it's called Cosmic Cradle, Elizabeth Harmon. And she also just came out with a book called Babies Are Cosmic, which is definitely a nice read. But I also love Elizabeth Hallett. Some other books I like, which go into the soul track, it's called. And it's nice to read books. And in my book, I'm in the middle of writing my book. That'll hopefully come out maybe next year. And so just getting those books is good because we need the logic. We want to see the words. And so that's a good foundational piece, right? And then after that, you just kind of dabble more into it, join groups of people, connect with the energy, do meditations. I'm sure, Sarah, you have things around that as well to connect with and to explore.
And then maybe just talk about sort of the psychic sense, and then why our babies love to communicate through that space.
Well, because that's the only space that will listen to. It to me it's a frequency. So babies are in different frequencies, even the ones, everybody's babies in different levels of their own frequency. I'm going to try to put these in words that make sense. And so they communicate that way because it's kind of like if you were in another, let's say you're in I'm in America and I'm trying to call China. It's like I'm using the phone because that's the form of communication I'm using. There's nothing else I could do. I was like, maybe I could fly there real quick, or maybe that's not a good example, but I'm trying to think of a better example. Is it's just, without overthinking it, it's just a form of communication that makes sense. Because the more we go inward into our own psychic awareness, into our own soul selves, we get to see so much more. I don't know about you, but I mean, in this pandemic of times, I've expanded into certain talents, I'll call them, that I was not able to do before. But what is that? Then it makes me realize there's a lot of many different levels to our own inner psychic space and beyond that we're just really testing out at this point. Like there's so much more to that. So it's really just a form of connection because the vibrations are different and everybody has psychic potential. You know that. It's the doubt or the skepticism or the judgment that's placed around that it becomes nothing. And so people have that choice. I remember, it's a funny story. Years ago, I was in my apartment and the neighbor came over and she was standing there. I'd never met her before. And we're like, oh yeah, we're talking about apartment. I was there. And I just see this image in my mind's eye, but I felt it in the room. And there was a dog, a big black dog. And I just turned to her and I said, do you have a black dog? And she was like, no, that's so weird that you say that. And I go, there's a black dog running around my house right now. And I'm just like 100% sure of it. And then it took her a moment. And then she was like, she looked at me and paused and she goes, oh my gosh. She goes, I did have a black dog, but he died. And his name was Blackie. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, like, so her dog in spirit came in the house with her, was running around and I saw it. And it was like, why did I see that? I don't know. But that was at a time where I knew I had something happening, but I just wasn't sure to the extent of it. But what I started to do from that point on, and this is the good or not so good part of having parents that were self-involved, is I got to explore myself at a young age with all these different odd things I would say was happening to me. There was no one to tell me it wasn't untrue because they were too involved with themselves to even notice that I had that, if that makes sense. And so I just started saying things all the time. Like I told this woman that was very vulnerable. I was like, but it was so convincing to me. And I've had many different supernatural stories like that throughout my lifetime, bringing me up to where I am now. And then I see there's more potential and possibility. And so that psychic space is always there. I was just telling someone the other day, and even was teaching my students, is that it's on 24 hours a day. Like that visual that I went up into the mountains where there was not a single soul around, like maybe a few souls. And it was just all nature for miles. I sat there and I had a visual story of octopus in the middle of the desert, by the way, and all this stuff coming through. And it made me realize even more. I was like, wow, you're always tapped into the visual psychic space. But your awareness of it is important because if I have to be in that, I'll probably would go crazy, right? So I shift my awareness to like not be in that space like 100% of the time, because I'm going, wow, my world speaks. And I know it's not just me. I know it's for a lot of people. And I started to test it out more. I'm just driving somewhere and I had this vision. I go, well, that's a weird vision to have. And then I come home and the vision has manifested. So then I go, wow, I wonder if things that I think are my imagination are actually real energy in translation, but it's being translated to the way I know how to understand it. And that's the piece that people learn in the psychic space. Is how is your spirit baby translating that insight to you? I see it in a different way because I've learned to talk to the soul and I ask the soul to come into the space in the beginning of the session, but they may not be that chattery. So I wait till the end of the session, and along the session, as I'm looking at their energy field, I like listen to the baby in between that and then get what I can. Or sometimes it's more than one baby. And then we work from there. And so the soul of a child is still a being. It's a person. We have to create an invitation to that. Like we can't be so demanding of it, but it's like, oh, but it's again, the awareness. It's that tricky place of like, some people want it like a certain way, and then they totally shut down any possibilities of connection, of seeing the connection. There may still be a connection though. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too to be able to like when I've been practicing it with my guide, she's like talking about to be able to ask questions of it too, kind of like, well, what's that there? And I'll be like, I don't know. And then we'll ask, and then when you can ask, oh, okay. And start to be able to learn a little more about it. Otherwise, it just comes and you're like, I don't really know why that came.
Exactly. And even with the babies, I've done that. I go, I don't know what telepathically, I say to them, I don't know what you want me to tell this parent because it's not translating properly. I'm writing it down. I'm going, I don't know what that means. Am I just going to say this to them? Or how do you want me to do that? Or sometimes it's about the physical body. Sometimes it's symbolic, but I can't tell the difference, to be honest, energetically between symbolisms and literal. So this one particular woman, I laugh, and I've shared this story before. Her baby was showing me bubbles all over the carpet. And I go, why are you showing me bubbles all over the carpet? I don't know what this means. I'm just going to share it. And I said, the baby's talking about scrubbing bubbles all over the carpet. And she goes, oh my gosh. She goes, right now the carpet cleaners are here scrubbing the carpet. So I was like, okay. And then I realized it wasn't, the baby was, that message to me was, I'm here. I literally am, I'm telling her this. So you know that I'm here. Like and she was going through conception. She wasn't even pregnant yet. But baby was like, why? Because to me, I'm like, oh, that sounds silly. Why tell me that? Right. But it meant something. It meant like, I see what's happening. Like there's literally, this is what's happening right now. And I didn't want her to know it. That's why I was like, is it a symbolism? Does she need to clean her house? Is she dirty? Like what's happening? And some things do come line. Other times I had a child, a little girl once say, my mommy has no eggs. Oh. And I looked at her energy, like in my own psychic space, and I went, I can't tell her that. You want me to tell her that? So I was like, but I believe you, because babies will share things about the medical stuff that I may not pick up on right away. Mm-hmm. And so then I tune in and go, you're right, there are no eggs. What is that? So then I said, I take a breath and I tell the woman, well, this little girl's here and she's talking about you. Like the eggs are on the outside of your ovaries. What is that? And she said, no, you're right. I don't produce eggs. So I was like, oh my God, thank God. I was so freaked out. And, not that was a good thing for her, but, and then she's been through, it's a long story, but multiple, stuff around that. And I can't say too much, but, that little girl, I really trusted in her. And I do have babies who say my mom's thyroid or my mom's progesterone, I hear. And I'm like, okay, why are they saying this? And they're like, oh, everything's fine. I go, is it though? Because why are they telling me? I'm not asking them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I kind of want to trust what they're saying to go check things out. I was like, go check things out. Like why is this energy so strong? And then my energy, how I tune in, I will see things too, but I sometimes see different things than what the baby wants to share. So it could literally be from like, there's no eggs to like the scrubbing carpet. And I'm like, okay. So my point is your psychic space, things will come through in different ways like that, not to judge it. That's the piece we shut down. We shut down, judge it. And then it becomes nothing. It becomes then what? Like what you're getting this insight for a reason. And if we don't know what it is, and I've had that happen many times with people, by myself, just put it out in the back burner and let it just be there. And if it wants to come back, if it needs to, it's fine. It's just, you don't want to go into the self of like, you suck and you weren't good enough. And this is what shuts people down, is that insecurity, right? And it's not about insecurity. It's about building that psychic space, building it with love. It's okay to be insecure and have doubt and skepticism, but also still building in like something's happening. There's power in here. And then that becomes the frequency of favor.
Yeah, we do a practice where it's like there's energy as a color. And then she'll say, okay, the color blue, that tells you that you're not intuitive, that tells you that you're not psychic. Put that down the grounding cord and have it shoot away, because you've taken on that. That's what energy is that? Yeah. That's interesting. That's, because a lot of us are like, we go against our gut. Yeah. We are like, we know this is a thing. And then we're like, we go the other way. And like now I'm just like afraid. Like before I'd be like, okay, I'll go the other way. And now I'm like, no. And
I know, right? Isn't that awesome?
Sorry, see you later. Yeah.
I love that. I did that too. Now I'm like, F that. I'm going to curse on your podcast, but I'm like New Jersey. No, I do. I was like, because here's the thing that people need to realize too, just in conception and life, when you're building upon trust and layers upon trust, your world becomes all about trust. I'm not going to say you're not going to have fear and be scared, but having trust in a time of a pandemic is so fucking profound. Sorry, I said the F word. It really is, because you could delete that out.
No, I said let it out.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure with the podcast.
No, I'm a huge swearer. I don't normally swear on my podcast, but I am like the biggest potty mouth. But yeah, go for it.
Okay, I usually am, and I on podcasts I tend to like keep it in. I think you're encouraging that energy. No, because it's just been so expansive in so many ways, because we are in a time of extreme fear and brainwash and corruption. And even good meaning people are corrupted right now and enchanted by what's happening. And it's hard to hold. But then you go, wow, what is this deeper energy? What is happening? What is going on? And then you get to kind of hold your light and your energy of trust. What do you trust in your immediate world? Your connection to who you are. Are you safe? What is your fear? I mean, the number one biggest fear right now in the world is death. I mean, that's what it is. People make decisions out of fear of death. But if you're schooled in death, not perfection around it, which is interesting. In 2019, I studied death midwifery. And I remember in 2019, I went, it has to be done in 2019. Cannot be beyond that. And I remember doing all the trainings, and it was really intense. It's not easy, even for somebody who does mediumship. It's a very intense experience, because you're going into the consciousness of death, the after death, preparing the body, the psychology of death, and with other people in a room. So it's remember when they used to do that? And so then I was like, 2020 came and I was like, it was interesting because the beginning of the year, it was like a reboot for me. I got very sick many times, too much. And I was like, I'm going to detox. I'm going to do this. And I remember that whole year I didn't book any trips. So I think that a lot of us knew something was happening. It wasn't like me to do that. And it wasn't like me to go on this extreme detox. I was like, okay, I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And then when everything shifted, I was like, oh, and then everything comes together and then you go, oh, okay. And then we're, we are here now. And then it's like swinging it back to trust is huge. And in conception, I've seen women go back and forth from IVF to not IVF. And like you said earlier, it's a rebrain kind of washing of like, okay, now you told your body all it could do is that one way. So now you're going to have to unwind and and I've seen women do it, but I tell them it's not easy if you're going to do from one to another. But this woman I worked with, and she was going on 10 years, by the way, and she did IVF and she had to it wasn't good. She had to get a termination, which was horrible, right? And then, which does happen. I've heard this story with the other people. And then IVF, her son's here, yay, but where's my other kid? Or where's the girl? We were talking to him, but she's like, everyone says you could do it natural. The doctor, everyone in her 40s, she did. But it was like a lot of work to go, I need IVF, I need that other way, but she did it. And it was such a profound, and she did a lot of work though. She wasn't just sitting around waiting. She was like really, really doing a lot of stuff and just really present and in connection with her body, with baby, but she was scared too. She wanted to do, she wanted to make choices based on fear. And a lot of people do. It's not so bad. It just depends to what extreme of fear we go into with it. But to really ultimately step into trust is like, oh my gosh, even when you're like half scared, you're like, oh my God, am I going to move into trust? But is it? And then you see the result of it and you see that, oh my gosh, like it was incredible. Like I made this terrifying situation and I trusted of myself. Just that inch or drop of light said, don't do it or move in this direction. And you did it and you see the result of it. Then you realize, wow, this fear stuff is so interesting. It's so persuasive. And it thinks that it's your intuition, but it's not. And I say that not to scare women, and men but it's true is that I've caught people. I was like, is it intuition or is it fear? And I hate to say it, but a lot of times there's fear. Mm-hmm. That's not intuition. Mm-hmm. So those that are tuning in, it's not, they're not the same.
Yeah. Fear is not like love is not the intuition is not impatient and scary.
Yes.
Oh my God, like panic. That's fear. We get confused with it. And so you have a free download for us. I'm going to have the link in the show notes. So what can they expect with that? So it's conscious conception, spirit baby communication, and energetic fertility. So you got some special gifts for us, a workshop and another little recording.
Absolutely. Creatively conceiving. It's a great fun workshop. And then I think it does have a little meditation in it, but it's more, I call it my energy lecture. So we're going to go into this creative spiritual, energetic part of conception. And then a nice little spirit baby meditation from my old membership. But I had a membership. I'm going to redo a new one. But it's from the Spirit Baby Collective and it has music to it and it's nice. And just getting you connected with baby energy and just seeing what that feels like. And as I call it now, your spirit baby experience. This is like a new term that came to my mind just to sit with it and to have that. But absolutely, this is for your community. I've pieced together just for you guys or gals. Guys, that's my Jersey part coming out. I always say guys.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I'll have the link for that in the show notes. Any final words here, Kelly, on spirit babies and intuition or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, just if you feel that call and that connection, it's there. There's something to that awakening journey. Anybody that's in conception, fertility, whether they're struggling, not struggling. If you're struggling, I'd say there's an awakening happening. Listen to it, go inward. And continue to navigate. I've seen so many women who were told they would never conceive and science said no, but you know what? We can defy science all the time as I like to live my life in that and continue to trust, listen, be guided and talk to baby being and continue to see what comes from that.
I love it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was awesome connecting and talking to you. We could talk for hours, I feel like, about this topic.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Hey there, excited to invite you to a special masterclass where you'll learn how to improve your chances of pregnancy success if you have low AMH and or high FSH. This live masterclass is on Tuesday, June 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Go to getpregnantfreebie.com. That's getpregnantfreebie.com to register or click on the link in the show notes to register your spot. Space is very limited. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. Hey, guess what? Blue Blocks is having their end of year financial sale. You can save 20% off on orders up to $159 US, 25% off on orders over $160 US, and 30% off on orders over $315 US. Definitely check out their awesome selection of blue and green light blocking glasses for day use and for evening use as well. Melatonin is important for female fertility. It helps regulate hormones and maintain the body's circadian rhythms. Plus, it helps determine the frequency and duration of the menstrual cycle. Plus, it impacts sperm count and motility. Blue and green light negatively impact our melatonin production. That's why we recommend Blue Blocks, blue and green light sleep glasses to all our one-to-one clients. Simply go to Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout to receive your 15% discount. That's Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.